welcome to Lesson 30. In this lesson, we're going to learn a bit more about verbs, specifically about mood and voice. Our phrase is Benedicta tu in mulieribus, thou art blessed among women, or as we pray, blessed art thou among women. So far you've learned that verbs express action or being, and that in Latin, verb endings denote the doer of the action. You've seen how verbs in Latin and English are conjugated according to the grammatical person in singular and plural forms. You've also seen that verbs are organized into 4 groups in Latin, called conjugations. You've learned that we use tenses to indicate when that action or being takes place, and you've been introduced to the 4 principal parts of Latin verbs and have seen that these help us to form the tenses. You've also seen that the verb to be is irregular in every language, and you've learned its forms for the main tenses in Latin. Now we're going to look at 2 other important aspects of the verb, mood and voice. When we speak of mood in grammar, we're speaking of the attitude of the speaker toward what he or she is saying or doing. Verbs can be one of 3 moods: the indicative, the imperative, and the subjunctive. The indicative mood simply states a fact. In other words, it states the action of the verb. Indicative verbs can be used in various tenses: present tense, past tense, future tense. For example, the angel of the Lord declared unto Mary, "To thee do we cry." So the first one's past tense, the second one is present tense. The imperative mood expresses a command. This mood is not divided into tenses. For example, "O come, let us adore him," or O come, Emmanuel." We use the imperative form when praying, when addressing God or the saints, because a prayer is classed as an order. We'll do more work on the imperative mood in the next lesson. Our third mood is the subjunctive mood. This expresses something that is not happening, but is a possibility. It may be a desire or something we pray for. "May thy kingdom come," or "let there be light." We'll look more closely at subjunctive verbs in lessons 33 and 34. Now, voice. In the language of grammar, the voice of a sentence denotes whether a verb is active or passive. Active verbs are used when a subject noun is the performer of an action. All of the verbs we've studied so far have been active verbs. For example, our usual example, the angel of the Lord declared unto Mary. The subject, the angel, performs the action of declaring. Another example, I believe in God. The subject, I, is performing the action of believing. But sometimes, however, the subject noun is experiencing an action. For example, when Jesus was put to death and Jesus was buried. In both of these cases, our subject, Jesus, experiences something. That is, the subject receives the action of the verb. A sentence like this is said to be in the passive voice, and its verb is a passive verb. In English, passive verbs are used with auxiliary verbs such as was, which was used in our examples, was put to death and was buried. In Latin, some passive verbs require an auxiliary verb, while some do not. It all depends on which tense is being used. Latin present, imperfect, and future tense verbs do not require an auxiliary verb when they're in the passive voice, because they have their own set of endings. Perfect tense verbs use the 4th part of the verb, the perfect passive participle that we mentioned in a previous lesson, as well as a form of the verb to be as its auxiliary. In lesson 32, we'll look more closely at passive Latin verbs, so don't worry too much about those now. Vocabulary. Venter, ventris, masculine, womb. Coronatio, coronationis, coronation. Benedictus, benedicta, benedictum, blessed. Ducedo, ducedinis, feminine, sweetness. Assumptio, assumptionis, assumption. Crucifigere, to crucify. For homework, there are lessons in your text, and there are also some supplementary exercises to download and complete. Don't forget to keep doing some drill according to your drill schedule. And that's it from me. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.